Okay, so in your package, you should also have a handout on orientation, onboarding, and ongoing engagement. Okay, so I'm going to start out with some stats, and I'm going to tell you a story, then we're going to dive right in. Sound good? Haha. So for those who are here in September, these are going to be familiar to you. The employee statistics, 19 to 37% of new employees quit within their first year. Second, 22% of staff turnover occurs within the first 45 days, so the first month and a half, because they've just been on the job market, they've been distributing their resumes out, and they may have gotten called by more than one employer. So if you don't hook them and engage them right away, they're at flight risk right at the beginning. But this one, I don't think I shared with you last time, that 5%, 1 in 20 employees decide that they're going to quit on the first day. That's exactly why we've studied this and found out that 58% of employees who have had a structured onboarding program 3 years from now, which is pretty good retention with the millennials, right? Because it's, on average 2 years to hold a millennial engaged and connected. So that's why we're here today, and I'm going to tell you a quick story about my very first executive job. It was about 15 years ago. I'm reporting to the president of a Fortune 100 company. Guess what my first day was like? I walked into my office, the director of HR, who had been part of the 4 or 5 interviews that I had done, plus a presentation. She walks me to my office, and there's an old desk from the 1970s with a slightly busted chair and one of the coat hangers that wobbles because it's also broken. There were no business cards, there were no stationaries, there was nothing. And I thought, oh my gosh, what have I just walked into? This is a high-powered position, and they can't even give me anything that resembles welcome aboard. Well, thank goodness I love the people, and thank goodness I had a really, really cool job. But even though they hired me to design training and development, I ended up also creating an onboarding and orientation program just for the sales team that I was responsible for, that the entire organization adopted. So I'm going to share with you some of those best practices, because there was a reason why everybody really wanted to adopt some of the orientation and onboarding. So all I ask is that you think about and assess your current, because everybody, whether you have an intentional or an unintentional, you have an onboarding program. Whether you like it or not, it's the experience, the first day, the first week, the first month, the first year of that employee's life cycle and their experience, right? So looking at what you've got going for you and what you could improve, and then discovering and sharing some best practices. I have tons of best practices that I'd love to share with you, but I'd also like you to share with your table mates some of the unique things that you do to get some new ideas and fresh input there as well. So with that said, did I introduce myself properly? I know Jen. So for the last 20 years, my name is Juliana, and for the last 20 years, I've been a learning and development specialist. So I was a specialist, then I went general into HR, because I realized that I was doing HR on the periphery of all the learning and development that I was involved in. And so I'm really glad that you're here and that you're investing in yourselves, because it's important for us to grow. Let's go. What I'd like you to do, if you haven't already introduced yourselves to your table mates, do that, and then think about, what does your program, what do you do now for new employees before they start, on the first day, the first week, the first month, and so on. So step one, think about this on your own and write it down. You're going to need 1 or 2 minutes just to jot a couple things down. Then step two, introduce yourself to somebody sitting next to you, a partner, and share what you do. Good, bad, or ugly, share what you do with each other. Okay. All right, hot darn. So tell me something that you learned from your partner that you don't do. Can I get a volunteer? What's one thing that you heard that's unique or innovative? Go for it.
I didn't hear this from my table, but I thought I would share because I just had hired.
Yeah. Dana.
I'm going to share this because I thought it was pretty creative, and it wasn't something I'd ever heard before, but one of my staff members said that her friend got a dream job. It was like the job that her ideal job, and she had wanted it. And her first day of work, she went into her office, and there were balloons, and there was, like, her office was decorated, and there was a coffee mug and swag from the company. And so she went into this very welcoming office, which is very opposite to what you were saying. And I thought, that's something that's pretty cool for our first day of work, that I think doesn't cost a lot, and it really would be quite impactful.
Thank you for sharing that. There's no accident that there are balloons on your table because, you know, and maybe you didn't grow up in North American culture, but it represents party, hello, celebration, congratulations, some kind of welcome aboard. So let's take a look at some best practices. Before they even start, you can engage them. So I'll just share with you some of the things I've noticed, and then I'm going to ask you to just volunteer anything that you've also come across that's of value, because that's the beauty of a group. Before they get there, it blows my mind every time I meet somebody for the first time and they say, yeah, I just started my new job, but I don't have any business cards. Right? How many of us don't have business cards when we first start? And because it takes typically weeks in advance, which means that you've got to really have a robust system where there are triggers and so on and so forth. So if you can't get business cards, make sure that they have an effective workstation, they have a login ID, et cetera, et cetera. If they're out in the field, that they have proper PPE, safety devices and things like that. So order the equipment. Now, if all you can do, because you're on a restricted budget, get them a nice welcome card. And maybe the team that they're connected to might want to sign it, because that doesn't cost you a lot. You can go to the dollar store and get some, right? So you can find cost-effective ways. Number 2, paperwork. What we used to do at one organization where I was the HR advisor is we would actually mail out, this is in the days before internet was really big, and we would mail out the forms in advance wherever possible so that they could take their time and not feel rushed on day one when their brains are overloaded with all that information to fill out their benefits forms and their, So could you send that information in advance so that they can come prepared with questions on day one? And online access, not only if you have an intranet, but also an intranet, can you send them their login ID in advance so that they can navigate through the intranet portal and want to make it fun? Give them a treasure hunt where they have to maybe do some kind of a matching game with the faces and the names of the people on their team. If you have that, that information already, because some of you are from larger organizations, and so you actually have systems where you could tap into that. It doesn't cost you a lot of money or time to build those little tiny games up front, and then maybe they get a free coffee card or they get some coupon for a free lunch that week, something so that it demonstrates a fun value. It's not just a paycheck. So that's before they start. Let's talk about the first day. I really like the idea of the balloons. One of my friends started and she got a beautiful bouquet of fresh cut flowers, and it was something that really stuck in her mind. What a classy way to start my new job. Now, I don't know, I think guys like flowers too, but maybe you could also tailor it and transgender, because now we have a pretty diverse workforce. You think about what culture, what employee value proposition do I have, and how do I demonstrate that through actions? So, if you've ever seen where the supervisor or manager is not even there on day one to greet their new employee because the manager is so busy, that's not uncommon. It's just not a great practice. And so, what can you do to make that scheduling work better? Barb and I do a lot of new employee orientation programs with Juna, and we're actually piloting one with a public sector client tomorrow, a very large client. And we create passports. Do you know what I mean by a passport? Right, you need a passport to go to different countries and you get it stamped. Well, when you start a new organization, it's overwhelming how much information you have in that first 6 months. The first month in particular is it's a major learning curve. So we give them, instead of a participant guide, we give them a passport where they actually, it's a checklist type thing with some white space for making notes and questions, but it's an interactive guide that as they're introduced to other people, we have games in there, like a matching, a little trivia about, the person that's on this team and then the cross-functional team members that they meet, because they're not going to remember all those names, right? So what's something that could help them make that connection? So the autograph activity is one of them, where they actually have some of their counterparts in other departments sign off on some piece of information that makes it personal. The scavenger hunt. Do y'all know, does anybody use a scavenger hunt? No? None that you're going to admit to in a large group. That's fabulous. So a scavenger hunt typically would be a review activity within, sometimes on the first day, just to make sure that any key things that they've learned. You could do this online, or you could even do this around the to make it fun and interactive. The idea is that on day one, you're making that first impression. Welcome aboard, and it doesn't have to be fun and gamesy, but I'm giving you some ideas around it. Doesn't have to be boring. And so what we often do is a tour. Am I right? You all pretty much do a tour? Okay. Here's the principle of tours. Because remember, too much too fast, they remember nothing. It's called nesting. Start with the tour on day one is them and their workstation. That's the center, because it revolves around them right now. That's all that they know. Then the next stage, and it can be the same day or it can be on day 2, introduce them to their team members when they have a fresh brain. Because you've probably given them a tour of the facility and the site generally, but introduce them to the rest of the team. And then by the end of the first week, that's when they can meet everybody else. So you start with me and my immediate team, then the larger team, then other departments. Because otherwise they can't even remember their own team members' names, right? We remember 7 bits of information, which is why phone numbers are in 7 digits. So, 10 or more people without an autograph activity or something where they can remind themselves, that's the embarrassing part for them. They don't want to ask people's names again. You probably forgot the person's name who you just sat next to, right? And so now you're going to have to reintroduce yourselves because we didn't write it down for the kinesthetic learners. Boom. So that was day 1. Let's look at week 1. Do y'all do an onboarding buddy? So that if I have a stupid question, like where's the washroom again? Or what's the access code for... I'm not going to ask my supervisor. I'm going to sit there and fumble, or I'm going to waste a lot of time. So an onboarding buddy doesn't have to be their on-the-job trainer. That's that warm, welcoming, friendly person that is like their best friend at work. And Gallup, the Gallup polls, they ask the top 20 engagement questions. One of them is, do you have a best friend at work? Do you have somebody that you can go to when you're having a rough day that gets you and will make time for you? That's your onboarding buddy. So choose that person carefully. Who does the onboarding buddy in their orientation program? It's pretty common nowadays, right? Yeah, it's considered a really good practice. It's you. The company information. So if there's one thing that I'd ask you to really reflect on is how much information do you give them in the first day or first week that's just nice to know? They really don't need it right now. They need it someday soon, but they don't need it right now because they won't remember it. So you just want Charlie Brown's teacher, and then they go, oh, I think that we might have covered that last month. And so really be selective about the need to know versus the nice to know information around the company. So for example, some of the companies that we work with where they have a very high risk management lens, there are certain company policies, such as internet use policy. You know where I'm going with this one, HR professionals, where they specifically want you to sign that off on the first day, or there's certain risk ones that they want. But be thoughtful and selective around how you dole out the policies and procedures, unless you absolutely have to. Why? Because that's really boring. It's like reading a math textbook when you're not an accountant. So you're also setting the tone. On the job training, you probably have them work cross-functionally, if you're a larger organization and you have like people doing like work, you can actually have them job shadow and get trained. But in some cases, some of your organizations are rather small, and the person who's just departed, who could have done the training, is no longer there. So it's a supervisor or it's somebody else who's doing the training. And the most important thing about learning and development, and especially with onboarding and orientation, is try to make some kind of a meaningful activity in the first day and also within the first week where that employee can contribute. They can see the results and the success soon, because that's the most engaging part, as opposed to just going through training and by the 5th day they're going, oh, that was lots of information, but I haven't actually contributed yet. Right? So set them up to contribute in a way that will make them successful. So far, what questions do we have? Because we talked about the first day and the first week, and that's what most companies focus on. What questions do you have? Oh, okay. Well, at your table, share one thing with your larger table group that you do in the first day or the first week that you think is really effective. So share one of your best practices. 2 minutes. Go.
As I currently am in training what their jobs are right I've never had this. My first experience was like, here's a desk, a pot of paper, and yeah, I'm just going to find your way. Yeah, strong, but you're sure going to make us.
Yeah, exactly. Sink or swim.
It was sink or swim. And I mean, for the generation today, those sink or swim just doesn't work because they leave.
Well, they have different expectations, right? They expect this, and then they get that, and they go, this is not what I signed up for.
Yeah, so they will leave.
Yeah.
Whereas, back in the day, I mean, that's, unfortunately, that's what we expected when we went into an organization. That's not what people do.
Right.
It still happens.
Yeah, lots.
I recruited for Untitled office manager for construction company, and I had given them all the advice you're supposed to take on and they'll provide a day on, and that's what I wanted to see myself. But she went on that day. They were supposed to go offices manager coming on board day one. She had to go people around.
Oh, funny. No.
I was so discouraged. I'm like, are you guys able or how you introduce that employee of day on?
That sets the tone.
Yeah, I had to help
I know, I was going to bring it, and I thought, yeah, because last time it almost fell off. It's just a little heavy. But yeah, I miss it too. I'm so used to it. It's big. 30 seconds. Okay, that's time. Ready? Okay. Okay, that's good. So you got some ideas? Some new ideas that you didn't have before you shared? Excellent. Anyone want to share one?
Going up for beer on Friday nights.
Beer on Friday beer night. Yeah, I like it.
One thing we do at Sage, because there's two different dynamics and two different floors of staff, is every Thursday we get together for coffee. No shop talk. This is just get to know each other, and I find the new employees that have started really appreciate that. It's a way to get to know the two different floors of staff come together.
I'm so glad you said that, because when like, I know that we're talking about only 2 floors within the same building, but geography is so critical to building a team. And so, now you're reading my mind. When we talk about the first month and we move past the traditional, just that first week, those sustainment activities and the continuous team building activities, especially when you had geographical barriers, become extra important. So having some kind of a monthly, one of our clients does the monthly birthday cake day. Now, not everybody celebrates birthdays. For example, Jehovah's Witnesses don't. So just being careful around religious beliefs. But if you could honor something on a monthly basis where you bring the groups together, it is really valuable, so that we don't create silos geographically or even departmentally. Now, some of the things that we found have been popular are department matching games, especially when they have to work cross-functionally with other people, but they don't really, they know the email name and they can find them in the address book, but they don't really have a relationship with them. And so that's where we do the baby photos. One of our clients actually had like a wall of fame, and they would put, and it was optional, you didn't have to, because again, not everybody wants their baby picture splashed all around, but you'd submit a baby picture, or you as a young kid, and no name, and then people have to guess on the wall whose baby, like who was that baby, and so just things like that can make it fun to invite that new person in, but also to have that new person get to know the rest of the neighborhood. Right? The culturally diverse. Do any of you have some pretty culturally diverse folks from different parts of the world? Beautiful. I was telling Janice, Barb and I got a chance to go for a tour of All Weather Windows a number of years ago, and they have over 40 countries that are represented on their floor. And of course, naturally, if you speak this language, you're going to sit in the lunchroom with the same people that speak the same language or the same culture. And they wanted to also make sure that they didn't allow silos to get created. So they put up a big world map, and they put push pins in, and then they had the World Cup, they watched TV, like they do things around the cultural diversity, embracing it and allowing people to honor where they've come from, but also to share that with the team and not be isolated. So thinking about ways, like I love the potlucks, something that where you bring in something that's unique, a unique dish from your family of or country of origin, etc. So typically you wouldn't have to do that right away. That could be in the first month or the first quarter. And speaking of the first quarter, because by now they're still in the honeymoon stage. The honeymoon stage is 6 months, right? And then, like, it's 6 months and a day, and you go, oh, you've arrived. And now they're getting flooded with emails, etc. So they're still in the honeymoon stage. But at the 3-month mark, that's when, or actually we recommend it's before the 3-month mark, that they meet with their manager. Generally, Barb and I recommend monthly meetings where they do a plus delta. Plus meaning, what's working for you, what's going well, what's positive, and what's one thing you would change, or a couple of things that you would change, because they have a fresh set of eyes. They're looking at your systems with a new perspective, and so they're going to be able to identify opportunities that the old-timers don't see anymore. So giving them an opportunity to have a voice, but also the manager, the direct supervisor, can give some plus deltas to that employee and establish the coaching relationship, that ongoing feedback is valued, and so on. We recommend, especially to our smaller organizations, if you can, don't wait until the 3 months employment standards probationary period is up. Actually do a formal checkpoint at 2 months. Because I mean, how many of you are pure HR, like you are HR generalists? You're not doing HR off the side of your desk. You are HR. Oh, most of you are doing it off the side of your desk. This is helpful. Okay, so maybe meet with them after 2 months, because if your spidey senses have started to tingle and you're thinking they're not necessarily a great fit, they're not what I was expecting, you need to have the performance conversation sooner rather than later. Of course, you can terminate somebody anytime. You just have to pay them a little bit more past the employment standards, but sooner rather than later. And then within 3 to 12 months, I love the 9 months, you could have had a baby by then, right? So when you think about it, so by 9 months, the honeymoon's over and they're starting to really hot and heavy contribute. And so how do you still keep it fun? Like we have one of those Jeopardy games, and so we tailor it to, when we have like a quarterly staff meeting or something like that where we do a town hall update. That's where you could have, again, new people and little bits and trivia about them to just humanize them and make it more personal so that they don't feel like a stranger and isolated. One of our clients in the healthcare sector, small organized, well, when I say small, they're around 60. They have these monthly staff meetings and they bring in lunch, etc. And they used to make new employees do a presentation in front of the whole group. A presentation around who they are and something unique. And the neat thing is that you'd see some really creative stuff, but I could also see like they were, they're nervous, and then they have to talk about themselves in front of a bunch of strangers. So like tailor it to your group. But most people actually really like that, because then they clap and they learn something about that new employee that they wouldn't know because they geographically work in different parts of the building and don't really have much time to connect otherwise. Bingo lunch, same thing. We have a bingo card that we do where we put little pieces of trivia about different departments, and you've got to go meet somebody from that department over the lunch hour and learn something and then put their name, and the first person to fill their bingo card wins, right? And it, I know I'm focusing on fun, but it's part of what keeps people happy at work. They're spending a third of their life there. We also recommend that there's some kind of training for the new employees around what the annual review might look like and what their role is in it. So for those of you who have a review system, especially if it's an annual review, educate your new employees around what you want them to do, especially around goal setting. Like we do SMART goal setting training, and we teach managers how to coach others to set SMART goals. And so if that's the expectation, there's a good chance the new employees never learned that before. So educate them, help them. So I've just dumped a lot of best practices or ideas on you. What questions do you have about the first year of a new employee's life cycle with you? Any questions? Yeah, go for it. Just hang tight.
I just have a question. When you have a team that is not placed in an office, it's spread out across the province, how do you build that culture?
Ooh, great question. So a virtual team, right? So they're not all located.
All not located here.
Brilliant.
They look at, they're located in different parts of the province.
I was hoping somebody would ask that question. Okay, so if you have a virtual team, or even if you have a main office, but you have like a satellite, people, so 2 things. Number 1, you have to do some kind of, at the beginning, bring them together. And it's been proven, it's been studied, that you break bread together, you bond. So food helps. And warm food helps even more than cold food, just saying. So you bring them together so they get to see the whites of each other's eyes, and you do some kind of team building. Like we do the penny icebreaker. I know we stopped minting the pennies in Canada, but they work with nickels and dimes. And we actually just have them pick from a coin out of a bag, tell us the date on the coin, and then tell us the most memorable thing that happened to them that year. In 1999, my mother was, stockpiling for the Y2K crisis, right? Something like that, just to humanize them. That takes next to no time to do the penny for your thoughts icebreaker. And so if you do that at the beginning and you warm them up as a team, then when they're virtual, and they're emailing back and forth, they're more likely to read into the email a positive bias, not a negative bias. Because 93% of our communication is nonverbal and paraverbal from our tone of voice. The other thing is weekly or monthly telephone touch bases, or Skype, using video conferencing wherever possible, because that body language and that tone is so critical. Barb and I work like we have an office, but we work virtually. And it's because we spent a lot of time in that first year building face-to-face relationships. Same with our contractors. Yeah, so great question. You got to build that rapport and that trust up front. And on a regular basis, like quarterly is good. Yeah. So, thank you. That kind of led into, are there any innovative orientation ideas that have not been shared that you'd like to share with the group? No? Nothing's coming to mind? No problem. Then what I'd like you to do is think about, so great, they're now here for a year. The honeymoon has been over for quite some time. And remember, my mother told me my hot air would come in handy someday. During the interview process, you promised me all these things. You said this, that, and the other thing about the company. Every time my manager is not available for me, every time I don't feel heard or understood, every time that I'm starting to go, this is not what I signed up for. And in a market like this, people stay because there aren't a lot of jobs, but you've got a lot of presenteeism, like, coming to work, but not really engaging. And so what do you do to motivate and keep people? So again, at your table teams, think about what you do right now to keep your new employees connected to you and you to them. Okay, a couple minutes? Okay, perfect.
We moved out of our office we'll probably go back to an office, but right now we're just. Well, actually, I should say that we sure So we're
30 seconds. 30 seconds. Okay, that's time. That's time. Oh, and everybody gets louder. Oh, you just want me to whistle at you. Okay. Thank you for sharing. And so perfect timing, because when we go for the break, you can tackle each other and get each other's business cards and get more ideas. But is there anything that you heard on that last round that really stuck out that you can share with the larger group? Yeah.
Well, I think maybe this is maybe this is an old fogey perspective, but we were talking about the fact that, okay, in order to retain the millennials who, even in this job market, want to be constantly moved to stay in the positions that they're in, and would like to constantly be receiving more and more things to motivate them to stay in the position that they're in. Some organizations don't have multi-levels of for them to proceed up the chain. So
that's
we'd like to constantly receive more and more and more benefits and perks to remain in the same position, while a lot of us who came up through our careers and constantly receive more and more and more to continue to perform at the same level. And so we're thinking, what else can you offer them?
Right.
You know, it's sort of a perk a week to continue to do the same job.
A perk a week.
So if you stop getting a perk a week, do they then start performing at a lower level? I understand that sort of a backwards way of looking at what you're...
Actually, you're hitting on a principle of reward and recognition that's really important. Yeah.
So we're trying to figure out how do you keep them motivated.
Beautiful.
Without, I mean, if you were to stop the reward, is it sort of like a Pavlov's dogs? As soon as you stop rewarding them, they start performing then until you go back to rewarding them.
The answer is yes. So you all get it, right? Like if every time, if I just continue to have a routine system of rewards, you will become entitled to that. That will become an expectation. So in the beginning, and this is going to sound really bad, but what works for training dogs also works for training people and spouses. And so, no, it's true, right? You don't always have to do all the dishes yourself. So when they do, the first little while, when they do things that you want them to do, give them a cookie, give them the reward, and maybe that's time with you, right? If you're the busy manager, that actually is a reward, is your time. But then, over time, you've got to be more random and sporadic. You have to be intentionally not systematic. Otherwise, you do create entitlement. And we do this unintentionally. It has to be for over and above stuff only. And it has to be that's why we do a lot of frontline supervisor training, is that we teach the frontline supervisors how to give feedback in a performance-based way at the right time so that they don't unintentionally create what I call you create your own monsters. Because you don't know how to, like, where did you learn this? Grade 8 science, right? So take some training on, or send your supervisors and managers to leadership development so that they can, and this is a repeat around the engagement pieces from September's session for those of you who are here. As managers and HR professionals, get out from behind your desk and your computer and walk around. It's so funny, even in our office, there are 2 ways I can go to the water cooler, and I always go habitually that way, but because it's shorter, it's faster, I can get more stuff done. It takes a long way sometimes, visible around people in the office. And then I can also kind of see what's going on, and that presence. And it's harder to do with a virtual team, so you can do that online, is to have a presence online, like a weekly huddle, and so the key is to build relationship by hearing and having dialogue. And so as managers, I know how busy all of you are, and you're probably juggling about 4 different like 4 different jobs at any one, 6, 8, 10, okay, double digits. So it's really hard, but it's also a lot of time and energy to be recruiting for a new position or an old position that was vacated by your high performers. And so remember the stats of 1.5 times the annual salary. You want to hire slow, fire fast, take your time, get the right people on board, but then treat them well and actually have a purposeful program as opposed to an accidental one. So thank you. We're going to go for a break. So if you have any questions, tackle me or Barb or Janet. We'd love to help you out. But thank you very much for playing.